I'm thinking of divorcing my wife due to her drinking habits. I've only been married to my wife about a month now. It's been a great time and we've really connected, and we enjoy having a night out. She's always been a heavy drinker, which wouldn't be too much of a problem if she didn't get drunk so easily. But recently it's gotten a whole lot worse. We went out recently and she got so drunk she could hardly walk and threw up onto me. I kept telling her to stop drinking and we should leave, but she kept going and her friends egged her on. She threw up on me again. It wasn't weak stuff she was drinking. She was at a table with two other people and they drank a whole bottle of vodka and did 15 shots of Fireball between them two. I was at a different table with a few of my mates and we weren't drinking too much, just some cider. I didn't notice what she was doing until I looked over at a half-empty vodka bottle. I walked over and that was when she threw up the first time. She was saying some very awful things about me after puking and I'm not sure if it was just the vodka taking over or she was revealing how she felt. She started getting racial. I'm Jamaican living in the UK, and it really hurt me. I suggested we leave and she pushed me away and told me how the fun was just starting. She needed to be carried to the toilet and would sit in there for up to an hour not doing anything. I checked the toilet and she was in the same spot I had left her. I pleaded for her to leave but she went back into the garden and kept drinking. Eventually the bottle was done and there were so many shot glasses there too. I was sitting at their table now trying to stop her drinking, but my efforts were futile as she threw up on me again. She told her friends very personal details of my life that I really didn't want anyone to know. I told her we were leaving and picked her up. She wanted to stay but I didn't let her. On the walk home she kept falling into bushes and pushing me away. And told people that she was scared of me. I have never done anything remotely abusive yet she wanted to tell lies to other people. All my work friends think I'm abusive and have stopped talking to me. She really ruined my social life and I am contemplating divorce. I've caught her cheating once in the past but did not break up with her. This time I might. My parents cut my sister a slice of my custom-made birthday cake the night before my party because she cried for it. My 11-year-old sister is the miracle golden child. She was born against all odds and she was a girl, something my mother and father have always wanted. They have never failed to make their favoritism obvious, with her birthday gifts being literally 10 times as expensive and her getting what she asks for all the time. She usually breaks something, either a plate or glass, then blames it on me. She is very clumsy and does not break it on purpose, but when she does, she has realized she can blame me and avoid trouble. Patterns like this are recurring and have made me not like her very much. However, I am older and am assigned to take care of her whenever my parents are at work, which usually comes at the cost of my homework or studying. And then my parents get mad at me if my grades are low. My parents are always trying to please her and make her happy, regardless of how much the stuff she wants costs. They can barely remember my birthday most years, and they are always conveniently broke when mine comes around, even though they bought my sister a literal pony last year and she takes private horse riding lessons. This year I wanted to enjoy my birthday so I babysat for money and even mowed lawns to make this possible. My birthday was today but I'm throwing myself my first ever party tomorrow. I have been planning this for weeks and invited all my friends. I bought the food, snacks and drinks and picked up my custom-made cake yesterday with my own money. Today when I got home, I noticed that my cake had a huge slice missing, maybe a quarter of the whole cake. I panicked and asked my dad and he shrugged and nonchalantly said that my sister was crying for it and it was just a small piece, my friends won't even notice. I yelled at him asking him why he would do something like that when it wasn't even bought with his money and that my sister could have waited for tomorrow. This made him angry and he went on a tirade about how disrespectful I am and how I think I'm an adult because of my stupid party. I've now locked myself in my room and considered calling the whole thing off. Edit. I went downstairs to confront my parents and saw my sister with the cake on the table eating it. Most of it was gone. My parents said nothing. Cheat on me right before we get married? I'll turn your entire family against you. In mid-November, I learned my fiancé Sam had been cheating on me for 6 months. I discovered this by accident. My phone died and I needed to Google something, so I grabbed his iPad. Sam has iMessage, so all his messages sync to the iPad's message app. I saw everything, texts, pictures, and videos. Apparently that master's in chemical engineering didn't constitute much intelligence, because he never changed his passcode. His sidekick was a mutual friend of ours, Madison, who'd been in our home, had dinner with us, and was someone I'd actually seen as a potential bridesmaid. I spent days reading through everything, and she was pregnant. He'd also been sending her money from our saving for a bigger apartment fund. I was devastated. I cried so hard I thought I'd throw up. But what really got me were the things they said about me. They mocked me, made jokes, ridiculed and belittled me because I was the oblivious idiot fiancé who was so stupid. Madison would text me, chatting about wedding planning, then screenshot the messages and send them to Sam, laughing about how stupid I was. There was so much more and far more vicious. I was gobsmacked. I felt like the meanest girls from high school were standing over me, laughing while I cried. But I was more confused than anything. Who was this person, pretending to be my Sam? Now I realize I'd only seen one side of him. For 3 years, Madison had actively been pushing Sam to dump me, and suggested the day after Christmas, after we'd returned home from seeing his family. When I read that particular message, something inside me snapped. I've been snickered at my whole life for being the poor kid in a wealthy school, for being a fat kid and teenager, for being an ugly duckling, for always having older, out-of-date things, for being quiet, for being an unphotogenic teenager. But growing up with all that gives you a core of steel, and anyone who tries to punch it will break their hand. I was not going to be humiliated. Not again, and not like this. So I thought ahead. Sam had been out of town when I discovered the messages, so I had a few days to pull myself together. For the next month and a half, I pretended everything was fine. Soon, my feelings toward him hardened until my initial devastation was gone and replaced by nothing. I'd wait until I was alone to read through his iPad, always putting it back in the same position in his bottom drawer. He never suspected anything, and still never changed his passcode. I collected the most telling evidence, the most explicit messages, the most vicious ones towards me, the ones mentioning the money, and the ultrasound photos. I sent them all to myself and then covered my tracks. Christmas comes. We arrived at his parents' house on Christmas morning, with plans to spend the night. I spent the day watching that cheating, mocking, money-laundering scumbag have a lovely Christmas. He kissed me goodnight and whispered in my ear how much he loved me. The next morning, before we all sat down for breakfast, I sent all the evidence to his mother, and his father, and his 2 siblings, and 3 of his cousins. Any family member whose contact I had, received it. I was able to time this, because Sam's family is pretty phone addicted, and they all get email notifications. I wish you could have witnessed the scene which befell that house. The weasel couldn't even face his own family. Talk about whiplash from that plot twist. He ran outside and had to be cornered. His brother dragged him by his hair back into the house, but I didn't stay for that. I'd insisted we take my car, so I said my goodbyes to his family, reassured them this wasn't their fault, thanked them for everything, and left. I changed the lock on our apartment, sold the ring, put all his things in trash bags, and put them outside the gate to our apartment complex, with the iPad on top. Luckily for him, no one took anything. He's currently staying with a friend, as none of his family in town will speak to him, and he can't afford a hotel indefinitely. And don't worry about Madison, I didn't forget about her. I sent everything to her mother who she still lives with. What is your family's insane secret that sounds like a soap opera? My dad disowned my sister after she betrayed him. Now she'll have to live with her shame forever and there's nothing she can do about it. My family used to be really close. That changed when my dad discovered that my mom was having an affair with John, my dad's childhood best friend. He was basically his brother back then and he was my dad's best man in his wedding with my mom. He begged her to stay and work things out but my mom ended up leaving him for John. Eventually they got a divorce and my mom ended up marrying John 5 months later. My twin sister, Sarah, was always the stereotypical daddy's girl. My dad spoiled her a bit more than the rest of us and she was basically his shadow back then. That's why it was really surprising to us when Sarah chose to stay with our mom after the divorce. Back then me and her were the only ones to still live with our parents since our 4 older brothers moved out. I chose to stay with my dad and Sarah chose to live with mom. On the weekends, she'd come to stay with me and dad and I occasionally went to my mom's house. To say that the divorce and my sister choosing to stay with mom screwed up my dad is an understatement. He tried to act like he was okay in front of us but every single day for the year following the divorce, I could hear him cry himself to sleep. After the divorce, the relationship between Sarah and my dad didn't change that much. He started to spoil her a bit more than usual and still remained the usual super dad. He'd show up in every parent-teacher conference, ballet recital and soccer match and was the most present dad possible. Things started to change when she suddenly changed her mind about med school. Our dad was a surgeon and she always said that she wanted to follow his steps. But, my mom and John ended up pressuring her to change her career path to become a lawyer as mom and John are both lawyers. During her studies, John started mentoring her and they became really close. When she finished her education, he got her a job at his law firm. Then things worsened even more. In 2017 Sarah got married. My dad was absolutely thrilled about her wedding and he gave Sarah a blank check for her dream wedding. He was really excited because Sarah was his only daughter and I always remembered him talking about walking her down the aisle. At every wedding we went to, he always said to her that he couldn't wait for the day to walk his little girl down the aisle. One day before the wedding Sarah drops the bomb that my dad and John will be walking her down the aisle together. Well, my dad is the most non-confrontational person to walk on this earth and she expected him to just suck it up. He didn't do that and they got into a huge fight. In the end he didn't attend the wedding and John ended up walking Sarah down the aisle. The fallout was massive. After the wedding, Dad and his side of our family basically disowned her and their relationship became non-existent. She tried to reach out after a while and make amends several times but he simply didn't want to talk or hear about her. We expected him to turn around when she gave birth in 2018 but he didn't even want to meet her kids. Then he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and unfortunately the treatment didn't work and he became terminal. Even with that he still didn't want to see her again and she didn't understand that. Soon after, my dad started getting worse and his health started declining really fast. We lost him exactly 1 month ago and it wasn't pretty. He was in a lot of pain, and had been through so much in these last months. As heartbreaking as it was to us, he deserved to rest, he was tired. In the end, he was lucid enough to say his goodbyes to me and my older brothers. Hearing him saying what he said to me was one of the most painful and beautiful moments of my life. He said goodbye to my 2 daughters and it was just like when I was a kid. He gave them a kiss on the forehead, told them to be good girls, and said that he loved them. It was something I won't ever forget. The worst part was that my dad died without speaking to my twin sister Sarah. I tried to talk to him about her, but he wasn't interested in speaking with her. She started getting more desperate and then suddenly he died. It was expected, but she was in denial. His funeral was beautiful and a lot of people shared their stories about him. Sarah saw Dad for the first time since the night before her wedding and she didn't recognize him. He was very skinny and had lost his iconic dad bod from cancer. She cried a lot during the whole funeral. My mom and John tried to show up at the ceremony and my uncles kicked them out of the funeral. Good riddance. Dad's will went as expected. My dad's family came from old money so he always had a lot of money. He left a little bit of money and properties divided equally to all his kids, including Sarah. He also left a trust fund for all his grandkids including Sarah's kids which he never met. It was honestly expected. My dad never really cared about money that much, he just wanted us to be comfortable and assured that his grandkids all had something to support them. The tricky part was the personal things. He left a really big letter to all of us, except Sarah. In my letter he spoke to me about our story and about my childhood. It was really nice. I must have read the letter like 100 times and I cried every single time. One of Dad's favorite hobbies was photography and the subject of his photos was pretty much our family. As a result of this we had a lot of pictures from us growing up. He gave each of us a photo album and behind each photo, he wrote where it was taken and a few words. I was honestly very surprised. It was a very thoughtful goodbye gift, something that was very typical of Dad. Sarah didn't get a letter and her album didn't have anything written behind her photos. When she found out about this, she had a mental breakdown. The regret was eating her alive and she was admitted to a hospital where she spent an entire week. She is doing a bit better now, getting a little better every day. Her husband and I are really confident in her recovery. She is sleeping and eating almost normally now but still starts to cry randomly multiple times on a daily basis. To be honest, I'm angry, sad, and scared. Part of me feels sorry for Sarah but the other part of me is angry at her for what she did to our dad. My dad was more generous than she deserved. She took it too far, and now she'll have to live with her mistakes for the rest of her life.
I took care of my mother alone for 8 years, and now that she's nearing the end, she says she will leave the entire inheritance to my sister. My mother and I never had a good relationship. She always prioritized my sister over everything, buying her a car, paying for her college, investing in courses, and more. On the other hand, every time I wanted something, I had to work to buy it myself. I bought my own car, paid for my own courses, I did everything on my own. Despite being the favored one by my mother, my sister never paid much attention to her. The only contact they've had since my sister left home is my sister occasionally asking for money from my mother. And, of course, my mother always gives her the money. 8 years ago, my mother was diagnosed with a terminal illness. I expected my sister to take care of her since my sister was living at home and basically supported by my father's inheritance. Meanwhile, I was working and studying. But my sister simply refused to take care of her and said that if my mother wanted care, she could hire a caregiver. I knew that with the medical expenses, my mother wouldn't have the money to hire a caregiver, so even though it was difficult, I dropped out of college in my final year to move to her house and take care of her. It was very challenging at first, our relationship was terrible, and we had constant arguments. However, things eventually improved. I had to work extra hours, practically giving all my money for her treatment and living costs, but I never complained. Now, the doctor says she has a little over a year left to live. I was naturally very sad about it, but she seemed to have accepted it. As we talked, she mentioned that my sister's money was running out, and she hoped that her inheritance would be enough to sustain her for the rest of her life. I told her that only half the money would sustain her for just a few years. To my shock, she said she wouldn't give half, she would give it all to my sister. I was clearly shocked and asked her what she would give me, and she said nothing. I'm not taking care of my mother for selfish reasons, but her refusal to leave me any inheritance, after I've sacrificed everything, has simply shattered me. I left home, and now she's messaging me, telling me to stop being dramatic and come back home to cook for her. I don't know what to do, I just want to leave, but I can't leave her alone. I feel like I should never have left college to take care of her. I feel like I wasted these 8 years taking care of someone who never even cared about me.
My mom put spot cream on my pee-pee and I don't know how I feel. The last 2 weeks I've been worried about a big spot on my pee-pee. Yesterday I had an appointment with a doctor to see what it was. I'm 20 and from England BTW. Anyways, my mom drove me to the doctor's and came in with me. We waited like half an hour and my name was called, so I got up and walked to the doctor's room. Before I even realized, my mom walked with me in the room and I'm thinking, Mom, what the hell, because I'm probably going to have to get my pee-pee out to show the doctor. I sat down and the nice female doctor talked to me about where the spot was and how long it's been there and then said, "Would I kindly when I'm ready remove my bottoms?" She then asked me would I want my mom outside the room while she is looking. Before I could even answer, my mom said no, it's okay, he doesn't mind. It caused me a little bit of embarrassment because the doctor asked me, not her, and I couldn't now say I didn't want her in here. So after a couple seconds of looking at my mom and the doctor, I thought F it and pulled my bottoms down and the nurse examined me. Only took like 2 minutes, but all I could feel was my mom's burning eyes looking in my private area, and then the doctor said pull my trousers back up. I've been worried for 2 weeks about it, but she just said it's probably an ingrown hair that I couldn't have shaved in, and she will give me some pseudo cream to put on my pee-pee in the morning and evenings. My mom said to the doctor, I'll make sure he puts the cream on. I said, thank you, and we left the doctor's. As soon as we got out the doctor's and in the car, I was bright red. I was more embarrassed about my mom blatantly taking decisions away from me, like her being in the room, than the doctor seeing my pee-pee. I tried to talk to my mom about it and she just said she needed to know what's up because I'm her son and she knows whatever the doctor prescribed me I'd forgot to do it. Then she said as soon as we get home she'll put the cream on the spot. I sat up and said, what do you mean? She just said to me that whenever I get prescribed something I don't use it properly and forget, so she will have to do it. I said, Mom, I seriously am okay with doing, and she just smiled and started the car, so I didn't think anything of it. We got home like 15 minutes after. I went straight to the shower. After I had a shower I wrapped myself with a towel and walked over to the kitchen and asked my mom where is the cream. She said in the bag, so I went over and got it and walked back into the bathroom. No more than 2 minutes later my mom barged through the door while I'm butt-ass naked about to put cream on a spot on my pee-pee. I'm literally so shocked and embarrassed I literally froze on the spot. She said, oh, don't be embarrassed, it's only me and I created your body. I then went to push her hand away from the cream, but she grabbed it and squeezed some on her hand. She then proceeded to hold my pee-pee and put the cream on it. It honestly was so cold, so I made a weird noise and she said it's okay, mommy's here. At that point I actually felt a little bit sick. She rubbed the cream in for like a minute and said that's the only cream we do today and tomorrow we're due one in the morning and evening. I said please mom, I don't want you to touch or see my pee-pee like that. She just kept on saying it's okay, I'm your mom. I don't mind everyday random nudity like me getting out the shower or changing and she sees me for a second, but this was over the top. I know she's a single parent that raised me and I'm her only child, but I just think what she did was over the top and now she plans to do it every morning and evening. What do I do? Has anyone got any advice or anything like this happened to them? I really need help. I love my mom, but I have nobody else to talk to about this. Am I over the top? Is this normal? To be honest, I have no idea what is normal because my mom has raised me to her ways which might not be normal for others. Honestly, I was so hard typing all of this and I'm thinking of just releasing my load on her face to teach her a lesson.